thank the Forward Forum for giving me this opportunity to track. This is not going to be a monologue. I hope not. So I limit myself to showing you some figures. We can discuss some issues that those figures raise. These are neutral figures, in the sense that the figures that will be quoted from the most authentic of the sources in this country, which is the government of India. Let's hope that these figures are authentic, because they are only figures. I don't want to be in a motion to say that they are authentic figures. Then we can discuss the situation as we see it emerging in this country. We should also see this in the light of the fact that often it has been said that this country is on the verge of becoming a superpower, right? It's on the verge of becoming a great nation, wants to join the United Nations Security Council, and whatnot. So, we need to remember where are we before we talk of these kind of things, of being a great nation, and who after all has drawn that dream into the heads of this leadership of this country. I'm not talking political parties, leadership cutting across the board. Think in terms of doing these things. Thinking that this is a border, it's a great country, but not in the manner in which they think it is. It is slightly different venue, it is slightly misplaced in the contribution. To begin with, let's run through very quickly some of the presentation that is there on the slides, and then we can discuss. Some of you might have seen, so for those it will be a repetition. But there are new issues which we can bring into being, namely two I want to focus, because political economy of India is directly related to the issue of political decisions in the larger arena of economy. Remember, there is no such thing as a pure economic decision anywhere in the world. These are all determined by political considerations of larger political realities, and so on. So, next. Now, while we go on, saying that we would like to be this and that, let us compare where are we. We usually, one of the greatest powers, one of the greatest imperial powers in this world, the United States. We have 17% of the world's population, which accounts for less than 1.7% of the world's income. Our per capita GNP is $530, compared to US is $28,000. South Korea outstrips us. But this is where the crux is. In terms of the Human Development Index, which is a cumulative index taken out of the status that we have in terms of health, education, per capita income, etc., we stand 127 amongst 175 countries. Our under 5 mortality rate per 1,000 is 93. That is 1 in every 11 children dies. Our maternal mortality ratio per 100,000 is 540. Also, one figure which is not here is that 50% of India's women are anemic, 2/3 of rural population is malnourished. This is all NSS, National Sample Survey around. 50% of India's urban population is malnourished. We should think as to how we come to this. We'll talk about that. Now, this is so. If we add on the figures, then what we are looking at is we are looking at a sub-Saharan Africa within the Indian subcontinent. That we have managed to create, after 60 years of Indian independence, a sub-Saharan Africa in fact, where our people are not only below poverty line, they are at a stage where they are not getting enough to eat. One illustrative figure would be that if you do a rough calculation, India's food production ranges between 175 to 210 million tons, and we are stabilized at that, which comes to roughly 430 grams per head per capita per day. This is availability. Access is a different story. Out of that 430 grams, how much is accessible to all is a different story. It is not. As a result, we have this sub-Saharan Africa in this country. Next. Now, we know that the IT sector is booming. Who else would know this with us, right? We do know that. But if you look at the total job market of this country, then the services sector accounts only 0.25% of the resources. One major indicator of how the economic crisis is growing would be to look at the unemployment figures. To what extent the economy is generating capital and employment. Right? We have a situation where most of our industry, most of the cutting edge industry is capital intensive, not labor intensive, whereas our strength is in labor and not in capital. As a result, what has happened, not just as a result because of that, but because since 1985, we can say that there has been a strategic withdrawal of the state. I am not saying the not the government but the state, the Indian state as a whole, from the arena of development. So what has happened is in 1985 we were investing almost 15% of our gross domestic produce in rural development areas. Today that has come down to 4.3%. Per year there is a reduction from 1985 of 30,000 crore rupees every year. Now the question is not that this has happened, the question is why this has happened. How come we started getting out of so many sectors? We were never really, the Indian state was never really in the sector of health and education. Today our expenditure in the healthcare delivery systems is 0.67% of the GDP. In education, is after all this, after Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, education says, what have we? It is not going beyond 1.5 or 1.6%. Where I think 7 or 8% of the GDP commitment is required. Agriculture, they say it's an agrarian country. 60% of people doing agriculture, locked up in agriculture, whatever. How much do we invest here in agriculture? State and the center put together only 1% of the GDP. So we have a situation where 60% of the workforce locked up and dependent in agriculture, getting investment of only 1% of the GDP. Why can't we have a crisis here? Surely we have a massive crisis on our hands. How does this work? Yeah. We talk of economic growth, and the finance ministry goes on, and the planning commission goes on 7, 8, 9% they are talking about. Right? The economy shall grow at 9%. The piper's dream, any economy in the world, and any economy, take any developed country's economy, if it has to really grow at 9%, its agriculture needs to grow at 4 to 5%. Otherwise, that kind of a growth is simply not possible. It has not happened anywhere in the world. So why should it happen here? Indian agriculture is not going to grow. There is no net growth in Indian agriculture. One very good symptom of measuring that non-growth is the fact that from 1993 to 2006, that is now, almost 1,40,000 farmers in this country have committed suicide. Out of which, from 2003 to 2006, almost 35,000 farmers have committed suicide. Now, this is a serious thing because the suicides are not occurred in these so-called backward states of the country. You won't find farmers committing suicide in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Pradesh. They occurred in Punjab, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala. The prosperous states of this country. Now, this is a signal that the productive system, the agrarian productive system, is in a grip of a huge crisis. That where your farmers are forced into a suicide, which is the last desperate measure, then we should sit up and take notice of that. Because if we don't take notice of that, then a larger crisis occurs. in terms of a societal and a political form. It might engulf and sweep away the present Indian if we don't pay attention. Now, I will go back and this. One thing I forgot to mention, the job growth rate we were talking about. In the rural area, the total job growth rate is 0.06% in the economy. Capital formation is next to nothing. Because no capital has come in the rural areas for last 10 years, especially after 1991 when we initiated what is known as the Structural Adjustment Program under the guidance of the International Monetary Fund. Then we signed on WTO, that is a well-known history. In 1995, then the Russian Committee report comes and so on. But what about urban areas? We tend to focus on rural areas and say that the growth is not happening. Same case for the urban areas. If we leave out the IT sector, which in itself is very tiny as compared to the total job market in this country, and a specialized kind of human resources required for that, you don't have actually any jobs left. The services sector which is growing is not creating, does not create jobs. Manufacturing is stagnant. Your agriculture is in that process. I'll give one more example. If you look at the school dropout rates in this country, if you start from standard 1 and if you end in standard 10, you have a 90% dropout by standard 10. So those who come into 11, 12 onwards are the remaining 10%. So you can imagine how many actually are coming in the institutions of higher learning. Those who are coming should consider themselves extremely fortunate because they are coming on the back of the capital generated by the people who are not able to send their children even to schools or not able to sustain the educational processes. Why? Because the state has simply given up on education. We talk of primary education in the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and the money being poured in the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. But what about higher education? What about secondary education? Higher education is one area now where the state has totally given up. No investments. We talk of public-private partnerships, which is a very fine term. But the real push to higher education will come only if the state takes the responsibility for it. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the Indian state is supposed to be like this. We do talk of what? The preamble of the Constitution, the socialist, secular, democratic republic. Right? That is what the preamble of the Constitution says. How far are we in those lines? Forget socialism and all that. What about equity and justice? And what about economic equity, for instance? Right? Or equal access to opportunities for everyone in the city. That kind of a thing perhaps has not existed on the radar of the state. And now it is getting manifest. Otherwise, one can't explain that the Indian state has not thought of these things. And this is not just purely economic terms. Now the real growth rate in industrial production is more or less at par with what it was in the 80s, which is no growth rate at all because if you look at the picture of inflation, which we tend to forget, then actually the Indian growth rate is not there. The economy is actually not growing. What is growing is the government production of the economy. That is growing. And one can't understand if manufacturing is stagnant, if agrarian crisis is deepening and the agriculture production is stagnant, what is good? Services sector definitely is good. But the economy of the services sector is by and large fueled by what is known as speculative money. There is no real production. There is no real, unless there is no real production, there is no real capital formation. This money can go anywhere. Like it went out of the Southeast Asian economies, like it went out of Germany once upon a time. If you don't go the IMF WTO line, it might go out of this country as well. And why should we otherwise vote against Iran in the IAEA board? Just because the United States wanted it that way. Very simple. Right? So political economy is linked on that scale nowadays. It's truly a global integrated economy that we are facing. We are no longer an isolated economy. And therefore, whatever the perils of an economy shall also be felt by the same. Now, before we come to literacy, there is one interesting data that we have. It is normally believed that the import bill is the highest in the country, that our oil imports continue to form the highest outflow of capital. But that is not true. The highest outflow of capital is due to the imports of the luxury goods in this country. It is not the oil. Now, this is something that the media doesn't take to highlight. Why should it? Because the luxury goods are not imported by you and me. Oil bill that on town that is the highest. Yes, our oil requirements are big, but the oil requirements are big because we have very skewed energy policy. Right? We don't emphasize much on public transport. We neglected it to such an end that people are forced to buy personal vehicles and go to the offices in that. Because we don't simply have an efficient public transport. But there are many other reasons to that oil bill, we can come to that. It also due to the fact that most of the fossil fuel oil reserves today are in the hands of the US and Russia. One reason why Russia could pay off its entire debt of $22 billion well ahead of its time is because of the oil reserves. And today, the entire Western Europe is dependent on the Russian oil to survive, just simply to survive. No wonder Putin can tell the president of the US about it. Americans are in Iraq, Americans are in Afghanistan, Americans would like to be in Kashmir, not because of any philanthropic reason, but because of oil. That is very clear now. There is no reason for the US to sit in Iraq, second largest known fossil fuel oil reserve in the world, in the Gulf. No reason for them to sit in Afghanistan, because it gives them direct access to Central Asian oil field. No reason not to allow a resolution of the Kashmir dispute between us and Pakistan, because Kashmir is very strategically located and they would want their base in Gwadar and other areas in Gilgit, because the Central Asian oil fields are just 27 miles away, straight as a complex. So, it is linked to a larger economy of scale. And that's why they got everybody together 4-5 days ago. If you remember, there was a small news item that the 5 major oil consuming countries had come together to form some kind of an understanding. Namely India, China, US and there were 2 others. This is just to parcel out and minimize the Indian and the Chinese demand, because growing economy will demand high levels of energy consumption, and the Americans will want to control that, and therefore passing off the nuclear technology to us. It is not as if they are doing it out of benevolence. They think that the Indians should go nuclear in civilian supplies and use that technology so that it will lessen the pressure on oil. So that the Americans don't have to touch their own oil reserves, which they are not touched actually.